In the world of the NFL, there are players who can make or break their team. For the offense, the quarterback is deemed almost unequivocally the most important position for a team and their success. On the defensive side of the ball, it's not as clear cut, but for many teams, it usually falls on a pass rush player or a star cornerback. Some of these players are homegrown talent who are either a high draft pick or they are a player who has risen above their supposed value and station to become a cornerstone for their franchise. Others have been traded for, their value which was acknowledged by both the team trading for them as well as their market value based on their impact to the game. With the AFC North being one of, if not the most competitive divisions in football, this linchpin player on offense and defense is essential to compete against the other division rivals. What I want to do today is go through each of the teams in the AFC North and give you my linchpin player on offense and defense. With that in mind, let's get to it. Welcome in, everyone. This is Jordan with Ravens Flash Report. And when selecting a player of this level of importance to represent each team as their cornerstone, there are, of course, going to be several players to consider. So while I'm going to give you one for each team on offense and defense, I'm also going to mention some of the players that missed the cut on being that linchpin player. Now, I'm going to be covering each team one at a time for their offense and their defensive player, but we're going to start in reverse order of how the standings ended from last year. For the Cincinnati Bengals offensive linchpin player, it's really not that difficult, because without Joe Burrow at quarterback, we saw what the Cincinnati Bengals were last year. Even with star wide receivers like Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, along with other significant offensive weapons. Now, while I do believe that Jamar Chase is definitely within the top 5, if not the top 3 in wide receivers in the league right now, it's hard to be convinced that the team would do better with Joe Burrow out and Jamar Chase in, as opposed to the reverse. Now, if you think that argument has a leg to stand on, Chase versus Burrow thing, I'd love to hear what your take is in the comment section below. Otherwise, let's move on to the defense for the Bengals. As someone who isn't a Bengals fan, I may be wrong about this, but from a divisional rival standpoint, the most obvious answer to me is Trey Hendrickson. With 17.5 sacks through 17 games, his impact is unavoidable, and while everyone is talking about Myles Garrett and TJ Watt, for good reason, Hendrickson seems to be a forgotten man in his ability to disrupt games. Just last year in the 6 games against the division, he had 4.5 sacks, 7 quarterback hits, 14 combined tackles, and only 2 missed tackles. There are other great players on the Bengals roster, like Sam Hubbard and BJ Hill, but they aren't players that offensive coordinators have to game plan for specifically as much as they do for Hendrickson. Moving on to the next team on the list, we have the Pittsburgh Steelers, and as far as the offensive linchpin, it's not quite as obvious as it was for the Bengals. But in my opinion, it isn't Russell Wilson, despite him being the starting quarterback. It's running back Najee Harris. This is the AFC North, and in this division, if you can't run the ball, things are not going to go well for you. Luckily for the Steelers, they have a back who last year carried the ball 255 times for over 1,000 yards and 8 touchdowns. This might not sound like much, but last year in this anemic offense, Harris was not only the most productive player, he was also the most consistent. Russell Wilson's play is important, and if George Pickens can actually make it through a whole season without throwing a tantrum, then we might have a debate here. But until then, the Steelers are going to have to rely on Najee Harris to pull them through. On the defensive side of the ball, this is about as clear-cut as it was for Cincinnati's offense, because any answer to this question that isn't TJ Watt is just wrong. We have seen what the Steelers' defense looks like without Watt in 2022, and the fact of the matter is that it has no teeth. Coming off of a 19-sack season where 9 of those sacks came against the AFC North to go along with 20 quarterback pressures, it would be a stretch to say that any other defender on the Steelers is as important for the success of the team as TJ Watt is. Moving on to the Cleveland Browns, where their most important offensive player was another one that wasn't as clear-cut, but with the inconsistencies on the offensive side of the ball, especially from the quarterback position, I have to go with Deshaun Watson. Now, while Watson didn't have an incredible season stat-wise or even consistency-wise in 2023, the whole point of him being the linchpin player in this offense is the fact that the success of the team from an offensive standpoint hinges on his ability to perform at a high level. He has a lot of weapons at the wide receiver position in Jerry Jeudy and Amari Cooper. He also has a good run game with Jerome Ford and the potential return of Nick Chubb. And he has David Njoku, a Pro Bowl tight end in the middle of the field. The fact that Deshaun Watson is the one who has to get the ball into all of these playmakers' hands makes him the most important piece for this Browns offense. On the Browns defense, this again is as simple as the Pittsburgh Steelers defensive pick. It's defensive end Myles Garrett, and I don't really feel like I have to explain in too great a detail why Myles Garrett is the linchpin for this Browns defense, but I will. Once again, not to draw too many comparisons to TJ Watt, but the fact is that offensive coordinators have to game plan for Garrett unlike anyone else on the Browns defense. As the reigning defensive player of the year, coupled with his ability to break games wide open at any point, this makes Garrett not only a player that offensive players have to be concerned about, but play callers as well. Garrett's freak athleticism allows him to make plays that would otherwise not be a concern. But like I said, how much convincing do you really need to know that Myles Garrett is the defensive linchpin for the Browns? Finally, let's move to the Baltimore Ravens, and the offensive linchpin here, should be no surprise to anybody at all, is Lamar Jackson. Just like with Joe Burrow for the Bengals, we have seen the Baltimore Ravens be incredible with Jackson under center and mediocre to good with a replacement. Lamar Jackson's contributions to this offense, though, are not simply his skill set, incredible though it is, with the other aspect being confusion and the threat that his abilities impose on opposing defensive coordinators and defensive players. Yes, Lamar is a great thrower of the football. He's also a great runner of the football, but those two skills combined make him a terrifying matchup and therefore put defenses on the back heel whenever he's on the field. Derrick Henry is an amazing running back, but we've seen Lamar Jackson in this offense succeed with backups in that position. Mark Andrews is an amazing tight end, but we've also seen Lamar continue to play at an MVP level without him on the field. Lamar Jackson is the only choice, in my opinion, for the Ravens' offensive linchpin player. The Ravens' defensive linchpin player, however, was a bit more of a difficult decision for me. Players like Justin Madubuike make life terrible for offensive linemen and quarterbacks, and Kyle Hamilton is a true Swiss Army knife for the defense who can play just about anywhere you need him to and succeed. But what I also have to look for in this linchpin player is how well the team does, not only without this player, but with their replacement in mind. That being said, the choice becomes a lot easier. It's Roquan Smith. Now, as I just listed a couple players whose replacements would not be as impactful as those they are replacing, this effect is even more significant for Roquan Smith. Not only is he the leader on this defense, both literally and mentality-wise, he's also arguably the best player at his position in the league. Roquan has a similar effect on his defensive teammates that a great quarterback has on their offensive teammates, in that he makes everyone around him better. Now, I love Malik Harrison, but he's not Roquan Smith. So, there you have it. That's my list of linchpin players for offense and defense for every team in the AFC North Division. Now, some of these choices you may not agree with, and that's totally fine. In fact, I welcome the discussion. If you, or anyone you know, is a fan of any other AFC North team that's not the Ravens, I urge you to give me your opinion on whether or not you agree with my choice for your team for offense or defense in the comments section down below. If you guys enjoyed this video, please leave it a like, subscribe if you're new, and as always guys, stay safe out there, and go Ravens.